Network, we would like to remind everybody that certain topics of discussion may not be comfortable for all listeners. Certain viewpoints may not reflect those of our partners, sponsors, affiliates, our hosts, or that of our guests. We would like to encourage everybody to keep a respectful and open climate of discussion for all topics, no matter how disturbing they may be. So viewer discretion is advised.
You know this world has gone insane. It is absolutely no secret. But tonight, Saturday night, you are about to experience the true measures of what that insanity can bring you. Tonight, you are about to see Bonkers, the one-of-a-kind show that delves deep into the world with no holds barred. Now, meet your hosts, Dakota Franson, specialist of the strange, and Christopher Mule, the UFO fanatic. Now, give it up, and let's see what these two idiots can bring you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Saturday night. Tonight, Chris and I are joined by Simon Clarke, who wrote the book, This Will Blow Your Socks Off. Two quite interesting stories that have come up when we're just doing our usual pre-show BS and around. So, Simon, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our public real quick?
Hi, Simon Clarke. I have a background in engineering, 15 years working on aircraft, repairing aircraft, and most of the last 15 years on aircraft design. So I think I've got a good understanding how a lot of things work, and especially when we're looking at things that fly in the sky that shouldn't.
Ooh, I mean, has some questions for you later.
Well, that's actually, I've got some questions for you too, because I'm really interested in aircraft. My father, actually, he does the model jets and stuff like that. And
the aircraft
design. Yeah, the gas turbine ones, you know, the ones with the gas turbines.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very expensive hole on the ground.
Yes, it is a very expensive hole on the ground. He's probably watching this. It is a very, very expensive thing. So can you tell us how you get into this kind of book? How did it all start for you, Simon?
Several things. My parents always told me that the first house they lived in had a poltergeist. So my parents were very open to poltergeists and strange things. And I remember when I was at school, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, whatever, when it was at junior school, and some people claimed that there was a UFO flying around the area the night before. It's always the night before, and it's never that night, because we didn't have mobile phones and internet and things. But I really got into it. I think I was about 19. I've been in the Air Force about 2 years by then. And for Christmas, I got Above Top Secret by, I forget his name. And it was just full of really good accounts of alien interactions. That, and then the engineering that I was sort of learning and going through at the time, you start realizing there's things that are just not capable. And one in particular that's been doing the rounds recently, the 2004 Nimitz incident, when they got these things flying at 8,000 feet and, you know, they dropped down to sea level, whatever it is of a second. But, you know, these things were following the ships for like 4 days. Well, nothing flies that long, because in a jet engine, you know, lots of transport aircraft, you can do air-to-air refueling, but there is a finite life because you're going to use some engine oil. You know, modern gas turbines are not as bad. The earlier ones that I worked on had a total loss system. So you put the oil in, it went through the front bearing, through a tube to the back bearing, and then out through the jet pipe. So it did get burnt at usually like £1 an hour. But there will be a finite life. How long, you know, you can't continuously refuel a B-52 or a C-5 Galaxy or something for days and days and days. You just can't do that. But then when you're looking at things hovering, you know, I think there's like an 80-knot headwind or something, but, you know, helicopters hover. Helicopters can't get up to 8,000 feet. There's no air.
Is it true that helicopters can only hover for so long? Is it And I've heard that
Yeah.
helicopters can only hover for a certain amount of time.
Yeah. So if you've got a full tank of fuel and it says that your helicopter will fly for 2 hours,
Yeah.
you sat on the end of the runway, you apply collective, and you lift the aircraft off the ground. You pull in about 80% power. If you hold it in the hover and just tip the nose slightly forwards, you start to accelerate. As you accelerate, you've now got air coming over the blades as well, which give you more lift, and you start to climb. As you're climbing, you get to say 1,000 feet. You can back off your power a little bit to say 70%. Now, if you so you're using 70% power, and that will last for 2 hours, that the amount of fuel that you've got. But if you try and hover, you're now using 80 to 90% power, so you're losing a lot more. So you can't fly for 2 hours. You fly for like an hour and a half. So so if you see a speck of a helicopter, whether it's 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever, that's in forward flight at cruise speed, at cruise power settings. It's like driving a car with your foot full down and top doing 120. Not that we could anyway, really. But if you could do that all day long, you're going to run out of fuel in an hour or less. But if you're at cruise speed, you use a lot less. So extra fuel tanks on board. You might be able to hover a helicopter for 3-4 hours. But also the helicopters are so unstable. I suppose these days they do have the autopilot on, so it makes it easy. But you're very limited on the amount of time.
So pure curiosity, what is your thoughts on UFOs? Where do you think they come from, and what do you think they are? On some of them, because some of them I think are military, because I do think we have got some secrets stashed away, especially the Americans, because they spend enough money on their military.
Oh yeah.
But obviously, I'm a big believer in the UFOs. I'm a big believer in extraterrestrials. What's your thoughts on that?
So where do they come from? Not a clue. Well, not here. Well,
not here. Yeah.
I listened, and this again comes down to my experience. So if you listen to Bob Lazar, so he described, for anyone that hasn't heard of Bob Lazar, he described working near Area 51 at a place called S4, where there's a hangar full of different UFOs. And he went inside a few times because he had to look at things. And someone said to him, and he said there's like shelves and things. And somebody said, how are they fastened on? Are they riveted or bolted on? He said, neither. They just sort of molded into the wall. Now, back in the 80s, that was probably about true for everything. The most things, maybe some sort of pleasure craft, sailing boats, things, would have things molded in. But whereas everything, so much these days is carbon fiber, but that's how you'd make it. You'd actually have the way that you'd build this thing up. It would, you make carbon fiber by putting layers in, or the sticky pre-preg. Then you cover it in a soft wadding. Then you put plastic all over it and you vacuum it. Now you either vacuum it to cold cure it, or you put it in autoclave, which heats it up. But it's vacuumed, so there's lots of pressure to squash all this together. So when it comes out of the autoclave, or when it's finished setting, you take all this off, and basically you have a panel and you have a shelf sticking out, but it won't be obvious how it's held on. It's just in there. So it's basically saying that the technology he was seeing in the 80s was about where we're up to today on some of the interior stuff. So
I've heard for like people extraterrestrial that have been inside these ships. That some of these ships could be living. You know what I'm trying to say? The material they're made from is like a living material that basically molds itself into shape, and if it gets damaged, it's like skin, it repairs itself.
Yeah, they grow the ship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What's up?
So I've also heard from other places where they talk about they talk about, you got UFOs that have smooth skin, and you got UFOs that you can see the rivet lines. And the ones with the rivet lines are the ones that have been back engineered and built, like I say, probably by the Americans. Apparently, there was even when, I don't know if it was Apollo 11, but it was one of the Apollos was sat at Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy, and a UFO flew past it to have a look. I don't know who said it, where it was, whatever, but back in the 60s, they had aircraft capable of flying without known propulsive systems. And that's where we get on to element 15, isn't it? 115.
Before I let my co-host go here, I've always been fascinated with UFOs, not just because how they fly, it's because how quiet they are.
Yes.
And it makes you wonder, they must have no really internal moving parts. It's like you say, you've got jets, you've got F-15 fighters, you've got these transport planes. All of them have got moving parts, the turbines and the oil, and
and it turns chemical through heat into thrust.
Yes,
you turn chemicals into what type of motion is it? Physical motion. Yeah, I can't think what the term is, but the to have something that hovers that doesn't produce noise. There's no obvious signs of propulsion. I've come across a few things on there's Project Green Glow, which is when they're looking at anti-gravity machines and how you can make those. In fact, I did some experiments with that, with getting thrust out of gyroscopes.
That's
so if you've got a motor and then you've got a spinning disc, you spin the disc up. But if you turn the whole assembly, it'll lift up or it'll push down. So in theory, if you get one at each end, it should produce lift for the whole assembly.
See, I've heard about the spinning Mercury. Have you ever heard about the spinning Mercury?
Some reports, yes. I don't think anything that we've done. Oh, just remembered there was on this propulsion. There was a guy, I think it was in Russia, back in the 50s or 60s, and he produced this. Had this machine on a desk, and if you got this weighing scales and you moved it above the beam, the scale went to zero, or it went the other way. Went like negative because it was producing lift. So they said, well, how high does it go? So they tried it at different heights, and they went to the room above it, moved the scale around, and all of a sudden the scale started lifting as if this beam was just producing negative gravity all the way through the building.
That's absolutely amazing. The technology that we're dealing, we are basically like cavemen compared to these entities.
Yes.
Yeah. Dakota, would you like to?
Rocket engines, like the newest things that developed, rocket engines, they're 1920. Basically jet engines are the 1930s, and petrol engines, diesel or internal combustion engines. They're back to the 1850s. The most modern aircraft, brand new aircraft. It's still popping out stuff from 100 years ago. That's the best we can do.
Well, it's like assholes in the military keep hogging up all the good stuff. They don't want to show off the fancy toys until time's on board.
Yeah, but it really makes you wonder what the military have got stashed away. I mean, they talk about Area 51. That's not really used anymore. It's used for like maybe jet pilots practicing. It's still used. It's used for, but there's other kind of places. Yeah, there's other places now that are used more. I can't remember. Is it where am I talking about, Dakota? It's near. Is it no Groom Lake? Where is it? There's
a lot of places, Chris.
I can't. It's Area 54.
There's a lot of fucking Area 51s.
Yeah, it's like Area 54. It's called or something like that. But it's the technology.
54, isn't it? Like a few miles north of the Groom Lake facility.
I think it is. I think it's like it's like an underground complex kind of thing built under the mountains kind of thing. I watched a program on it actually. I just want to say, everybody in the chat, welcome everybody. We've got 300 and odd people watching us right now. Thank you very much, all over the networks. But the technology is out there. I mean, do you think? Now, here's an interesting question. Do you think that the US military or the British military or whoever is in charge have crashed alien craft for Roswell or?
For the British military, I don't know. Doubt it. We might have, not sure. The Americans, I would say, absolutely yes.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely yes. Now, Roswell, because we all know and love Roswell. What most people don't know is that there was UFO sightings at Roswell for about 3 weeks before the crash. Most people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a tale. I can't remember which series I was watching, and this guy he was an aircraft guy, same as me. So Roswell Air Force Base at the time was the only base in the US that had the nuclear missiles, had the nuclear bombs, and the bombers to drop the bombs. And one of the things you do, if your aircraft's taking off from where you are and landing back where you are, they're not landing. They're not landing anywhere else. They might have some kit on board. They might not have a lot. But if they're going away for a few days, they need some kit on board. You need oil for the engines. You might need other lubricating oil. The bits that normally break when you go away. So you have a box with all these different bits and pieces in, called flyaway packs. So this sergeant is going on to the hangar where they keep the flyaway packs. And as he gets to the side door, there's an MP stood there, Sergeant MP. Now, when you're on guard, you are basically the station commander under the station commander's orders. So I've had it before where I found some wires under a car when I was out in Germany when we're inspecting with the mirror, and I said to the sergeant in the car, I was just like a lowly rank. I said to the sergeant, "Can you get the car, please, sergeant, and look at it and tell me it's okay?" He says, "My petrol pump." That's very good, thank you, sergeant. But can you get out of the car, please? Because it's like, I don't care what rank you are. I've asked you to do something, and you will do it. And the guy next to me's got a gun with bullets in it. You generally keep it out of the way. But you get to the point where you can say to him, "On him," and he'll point the gun at him. Now you've got a report to write. But it's like, so eventually this guy sort of realised that I wasn't going to give up, and I was well within my rights because you're not there representing you. You're there representing state commander's orders. So as this MP stood at this side door, and the guy says, "Excuse me, Macker," he said, "I need to get in, drop this off." He says, "You're not allowed in." He says, "But I need to get in to drop these off." He says, "You're not allowed in." So the next thing the MP does, as the guy takes another pace forward, he reaches for his holster and just holds onto his gun. He doesn't pull the gun, he just holds onto it. Well, the engineer knows, because he's done guard, that when somebody touches the weapon like that, the next action forward is you pull it out, and the next action after that is you make ready. The next after that, you don't want to know.
Yeah.
So if he's touching it, then he's scariest. So you have to turn around and go back, and it's like, "Don't bother taking anything over there, fellas. Just leave here because we can't get in." He's like, "Well, why can't we get in?" It's like, "I don't know." And this MP stood there, and it's military policeman. We can't get in. And you go, "Well, why is that happening to the hangar that they store this in, that has aircraft parts in? Is there something in there that is secret?" There's little things, being ex-military and being an engineer, that I and other ex-military and ex-engineers can pick up on that other people perhaps don't notice.
Do you think there could have been anything else in there, like maybe like weaponry?
Could have been. I did read one report that apparently these were alien grey children out on a joyride that crashed.
Right.
I don't know if that's true.
I've heard that one too. One too. Dakota, would you like to ask?
Now, I can't remember what series I saw it was, but it was examining alleged crashed UFO bits. It was just a little fragment that they tested. And they found that part of the composition of this alleged craft was bismuth. Like, what use would that have for aircraft?
Bismuth?
Yeah. Like the shiny crystals, always have kind of a cube shape to them.
Right. I know the sort of crystal sort of shape that you're meaning. What I do know is that when we talk about aluminium and aircraft are made out of aluminium, it's not aluminium, it's aluminium alloy. So you take aluminium and then you add in 3% of copper, plus or minus a little bit, and they add in other bits and pieces of other elements. You can add in magnesium a little bit more. and it makes it more flexible. They can be more heat resistant. It alters the properties. So when we're talking aluminium, there's 50, 20, 100, probably 200 different types of aluminium, and then you can heat treat it. So you add in different elements. So it could be an aluminium type material or composite material, not a composite, but it could be a chemical composition that uses that crystal. But I've never heard of that.
Well, the composition of it, the craft itself, it was like you had the aluminium, then you had the bismuth, and it was just sandwiched together like that. That's what caught me off guard. I'm just like, wait, what does that do?
Actually, that's interesting because there's not alclad. There is a form of aluminium. God, this is going back a few years, and you basically get it's an extremely thin sheet of aluminium, a bit thicker than turkey foil. Then you have a very thin layer of fiberglass. Aluminium fiberglass, and then it ends on aluminium. Now, what happens with that is if you've got a crack in aluminium, the crack spreads. They can spread quite slowly, then they get a lot faster. But because it's multiple layers, the crack might be in one of the layers, but it won't jump across the fiberglass to the next layer unless it's absolutely torn it apart. So it's a lot more fatigue resilient. God, what is that? It's been quite a few years since I've looked into anything like that. Because alclad, when you see the shiny aluminium aeroplanes, what it actually is aluminium alloy in the middle. Then they put pure aluminium on either side, because pure aluminium doesn't corrode, but aluminium alloy does. So you can see an airplane that looks absolutely perfect, but it has a scratch on it. You can see some white dust on that, and that's aluminium oxide.
Corrosion,
So interesting. But speaking of chemicals and things, I was watching a program on copper mines all across the US, and it's where somebody's just dug a pit and dug out copper, and they used LiDAR on like a quadcopter, and you can see these little pot marks all over this hillside from 3,000, 4,000 years ago. Now that was interesting, and they said, well, what we'll do, we'll take a sample out of the lake, or they took a few samples out of the lake, and it detected when, and you can look at seeds and so many other things to date these different layers, and they could see when the copper smelting was done in the area, and it gave them this sort of 3,500, 4,000 years ago. But the one thing they didn't pick up on, which I did, was all the titanium.
Right.
You're thinking, who's been using titanium 4,000 years ago?
Yeah.
So I don't know the history of that, but it's like, as far as I know, that's not been used until more recently.
See, the stories suggest that there was an ancient civilization before. There was many civilizations before, obviously us. Yes, so this is the humans maybe fourth time round the block, as one would say. So what's to say that maybe one of these civilizations, there wasn't a war that wiped everybody out, and they used maybe titanium to build their jets or their aircraft or their tanks or whatever.
In modern history, in the history that we're told now, there's no titanium in that. But if you go back to India and the Vimanas from ancient history, they're all flying around in these craft because flying was normal. And you go, well, hold on a minute, which takes us over to the shapes in South America.
Nazca lines.
And I had a slide on this. I was in Newmarket a few weeks ago doing a presentation, and you get the animals, and everyone focusing on the animals and what could be, whatever. But what I see is you've got these convergent lines, and they can converge for a bit, and then they go parallel. Well, what I have is I've got one of these convergent lines on my presentation, and next to it I've got the view that the pilot sees of a runway when you're coming into land, and it looks like that. Yeah. And then as you land it goes parallel, more or less. You know, it's the parallax angles and what have you. And it's like, well, if someone's flown and landed, that's what they're going to remember, and that's what they draw on the floor. And then, have you heard of cargo culture?
I think I have. I've heard it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
explain it for the dummies in chat.
Yeah.
So, so Second World War, especially in the Pacific, the Japanese are on one island, the Americans will land on this island, they clear all this space, and the aircraft come in, and they're talking to the natives, and so many people called John. They end up with it being called John culture. Anyway, so people have gone back to the islands 20 years later, and there's runways cut in the jungle, and there's aircraft made out of sort of bamboo and trees and things, and they're holding rifles that are made out of sticks. Sounds like really good fun, actually. And it's like they cut the runways because years ago, when I was little, or Grandad was little, they cut the jungle and the iron birds arrived. And you sort of look at the Aztec line, the Nazca lines, and you look at the cargo culture, and you go, it's like these people have been shown something, and that's what they're trying to replicate. That they've landed at runway places, so we're going to build them here, and wait for the things to come from the sky.
See, I've always been fascinated with the Nazca lines because it's a place that's always fascinated me. It makes you wonder. Yeah, there is. See the runways. I know what you're talking about there. I believe you. It looks like a runway, right?
Yes.
It looks like a runway. But then you get the big figures of like people, where people have drew them. But I think that's that whoever's been left behind have thought, oh, let's make pictures and maybe our friends will come back again.
Using symbols. Using symbols to bring them back. Because I know some people have been have had alien experiences, and they've been taught these symbols.
Yes.
So it's like I'm trying to think of one. If I give you like a 3-point with a circle around it, you think Mercedes, and then you're thinking it's Mercedes cars and Mercedes. So one little symbol can mean like a whole chapter or a few paragraphs at least, and that's the sort of language that the aliens use. So, and you like say, it's almost like they've drawn these certain animals on in certain areas that if one of their species flies over it, they go like, oh, they need rescuing, and they've been there for ages.
Yeah.
So it could be something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I mean, somebody. What was that? I thought you were going to show us something. I was just thinking it's fascinating because have you ever seen the reports with the American military how they've came across these UFOs that their bullets and their rockets will just go right through? Do you know find that fascinating? How is that possible? It's like where am I talking about here, Dakota? I can't remember the incident, but it was
there was a couple different incidents where that happened. There was the Battle of Los Angeles, where, well, granted, it's you can follow the times that everybody's stressed out, and when you're in times of high adrenaline, your vision gets distorted. That just happened. But there's also an incident where, like, stranger at the Pentagon, Val Thor, he allegedly gave the people that he spoke to his uniform, and they tried shooting all sorts of weapons at it and did nothing.
It's like it dematerializes. It's like the ship knows, right, the spaceship's flying along, and it's like, oh no, here comes a pesky human, they're going to try and shoot at me. So they do something to their ship, and it just goes right through it. And they're like,
I've never read anywhere they've gone through it, but you can maybe sort of see how they've done. But I think I've come across somewhere they've shot the missiles at it, and the missiles have just missed it completely. It's like the missile couldn't find it, or it's locked on, and they'd sort of zapped it, so it was locked off.
Yeah,
I mean, do you know about the story? I think it's true. I'm not sure. That there's a policeman on the A1 trying to stop people for speeding, so he's got a little speed gun.
Yeah,
and then there's a car coming up a side road from the east, so he gets his laser, shoots it at it, and next thing it stops working. Oh, what the hell's up with this then? But it had a reading of like 300 miles an hour before it turned off. So what the heck's this then? Anyway, so they got in touch with the Air Force and said, do you know anything about this? They went, yeah, he's lucky. Because he's up to radar this way as a tornado's flying towards him, 50 miles away, whatever it was. Because he got this radar, an unknown radar, he didn't know what it was. So instantly activated all the systems, armed the missile, ready to go, and all the pilot had to do was squeeze the trigger. So this policeman and his little speed gun and his police car nearly got blattered to smithereens, by this
Oh my god.
anti-aircraft.
That's a little scary.
That's
I've heard of
Oh.
incidents like that, but
so.
Damn.
If there's any police officers watching this right now, and you're doing some speed enforcement, and you're next to a military place, just let those speeders go.
oh god, don't tell
If
me.
you're doing 300 miles an hour, let them go. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
If they're going too
So-
quick, you know.
I'm assuming you guys will have read The Day After Roswell by Philip Corso.
Yes, I've
Yeah.
heard it.
Mhm.
I've got the audiobook version. I've listened to some of it.
Yeah. So I mean that to me is so realistic.
Mhm.
For anyone who doesn't know, he got given a box of things that came off the Roswell UFO, and he was told to pass these out to industry. Industry had to make their own backstory and keep all the profits. You know, it's your invention, but you know we've got this. Now, if you start looking into it, transistors. You know, we're all of an age where you know we remember transistor radios as a kid, and they were like the big thing, and we didn't know why they were the big thing. But everything used to have valves in it. You know, a radio was the size of a TV today.
I used to have a TV. My grandmother had a TV with big, massive valves in it. You're good to remember this guy sitting next to me. He's only in his 20s. He can't remember the things.
I've seen old TVs like that at their thrift stores. I know what y'all are talking about.
No, not the ones you had. You know, they were big TVs, but they were cathode ray tube, whereas these days they're all this flat screen.
Yeah.
No, the older ones didn't have computer components in there, which is what they had even back in the 80s and 70s. But the one we actually had one that you turn it on, you go in the kitchen, you put the kettle on, you make the coffee, you make yourself some breakfast, you come into the lounge, you sit down, you eat your breakfast, you drink your coffee, and then the telly would pop on. It took forever. So the transistors, which is what the tellies of the 70s and 80s had, you turned it on, count to 10, and it's sort of just about come on. And they had transistors in. Now, if you Google, Wikipedia, whatever, the invention of transistors, that's interesting. You got a manager and you got two blokes.
Yes.
The first story is it wasn't what we intended to invent.
No.
Okay. The manager tries to take the credit for it because he invented it, and he tries to sell it onto someone else without involving the rest of the team. And then the next thing they did with it, once they invented it, was passed it on to the Japanese, who started making it because it was the big thing in the sort of 70s that, you know, all these transistor radios and all this high tech was coming from Japan.
Yeah.
But as I say, the backstory, when you look into it, you go like, no, that's just bull. How can you create something that you weren't trying to invent when that's your job? He's developing electronics.
A lot of stuff's been invented that way, is it not? A lot of things have been invented that way, is it not?
It can be, but the whole story, you look at it and you go, and even if it was, well, we tried this experiment and got that result, then we tried that experiment and got this result, and then we thought, hold on a minute, and then we looked at that, and then we tried to make this. If there's like an evolution, you can go, I can understand that, but no, they didn't, and it's like, the electronics, avionics, outstanding. You know, we had the first.
No, when you go. Sorry.
Yeah, the first aircraft I worked on in the early 80s were designed in the 70s, 60s, in fact. Was the design of the Jet Provost. You know, they had radio boxes in like this, and that was the radio. Yeah. You know, he's got a little tuner on the inside, but it's connected back down to this great huge box thing. And the technology since then, it's just absolutely incredible. Roswell, if you've not been, by the way, Roswell is a very interesting place to go to. I've been there.
Have you been there? I would love to go there one day. Yeah. I mean, talking about technology, I mean, you look at technology now with like smartphones and tablets, and I mean, we're doing a show tomorrow on artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Do you think some of these UFOs, do you think some of them are pilots? Do you think they're maybe like artificial intelligence that's maybe piloting them?
I was down in Hereford. I was doing a book signing in Hereford. And I stopped at this lovely country pub. The the room would only hold about 20 people. There's a roaring fire one side. There's nice beer at the bar, and there's just friendly people all around you. It was just brilliant.
Yeah.
And the landlord said, "Oh," he says, "he's staying with us a couple of nights. He's an author." "Oh, what'd you write about?" UFOs, Bigfoot, and aliens and things. And the guy like, "Whoa, hold on a minute." And this guy said, "He says, I'll tell you a story now." He says, "You believe in aliens?" I went, "Yeah." He says, "About 10 years old." He says, "Grew up living on a farm." He says, "Me and my dad were like walking across the farmyard." He said, "In front of one of the barns was this blue ball, basketball, sort of football sort of size, and it just drifted across." And his dad said to him, "If you ever tell anyone about that," he says, you got a whole load of trouble coming. Just keep your mouth shut."
Yeah.
20, 30 years ago. Those little ones and the one that I saw, I would say definitely are artificially controlled. But, if you look at how Teslas are coming on, and at the end of this month, Tesla's got an AI day, and they're developing full walking robots. And a lot of the training for robots is coming from the cars. And before the show, I was chatting with these guys and saying, and I didn't think about this, but Teslas, they've got cameras all the way around the car. I think there's 8 cameras. Now, you and I would have probably thought that the computer gets all these 8 pictures and then sort of works out what's happening and then takes that through the AI. No, what it does is it creates like a circular picture around the car. So it's a full perspective, situation awareness, that's what I'm trying to think of. So it knows what's where all around the vehicle, and then the AI works on that.
See, that's
another step forward.
Yeah. But maybe that's old technology that we've had stashed away that's now allowed to be used.
It does. It certainly does seem to be that way. Speaking of old technology, this, as well as aliens, this is one of my other favourite topics. Ancient and advanced human beings. Let me move that over a bit.
Yes.
All those hundreds of people are sat on one block of stone.
Yes.
That block of stone is 4 meters tall, 12 feet, 4 meters wide, 12 feet, by 20 meters long, which is 70 feet long.
Yeah.
It's as big as 2 or 3 houses. It weighs 1,000 tons.
Yes.
And where they're used, about a mile up the road, has Roman built on top of it. And all the Roman blocks are like little tiny Lego blocks compared to this sort of reef block underneath. See,
I've had arguments with people like the pyramids, for instance, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, it was lots of slaves that made them," and that take a long time to build, right?
Yeah.
Or there's some places throughout the world too that I can't remember the name yet. We actually did a show in Dakota, and remember I showed a picture of this place. I think it's in South America somewhere, and these blocks are like perfectly made, and they're thousands of years old.
Yes,
and they look like they've been made in like a 3D printer. They look like they've been made to perfection.
Or they've been molded.
Yes, they've been made. Yeah. Everyone is exactly the same within. It's been measured. Even to make them to this day.
So close together that you can't get a sheet of paper between them. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, and this again goes back to my early engineering experience. So you get a piece of metal about that big, and you're going to square it off. Mm-hmm. Now, a piece of metal that size, 16 gauge, is 1.6 mil thick. It's like half a dozen sheets of paper. Similar sort of size, similar sort of thickness. To get that perfectly flat, and to get all the angles at 90 degrees takes you 3 days. Filing.
Yeah.
Now, more experience, you can obviously do it more quicker. But, if it takes that long to do such a tiny cross-sectional area, when you've got, like you say, these sort of 20-foot high blocks that are like 4 foot deep, whatever, or 5 foot deep, how the heck do you get that so perfectly smooth?
Yeah.
To get the next one. If you have a huge circular saw, you could do that because you're going to get parallel cuts. So you have both blocks nearly touching, and you cut that bit away and pull it in. But you'd have all the teeth marks.
Yeah.
And you would know, because one of the issues with rock is it doesn't cut straight. You'll always end up with odd angles. And I think the ones that you're talking about, I don't know if it's the same place, could be a different one, but the rock comes from the other side of the valley.
That's that. That's the same place. Yeah.
These blocks are like 20 tons and 50 tons.
Yes.
So you got to. I'm trying to look where my finger is. So you got to mine it. You got to bring it down side the hill, about 1,000 feet across the river, and 1,000 feet up here. Now, I do have an explanation of the block at Ballback, which is the one I showed everyone, and then these blocks. They did it that way because for them it was easy. How it was easy, I don't know. But
Well, they obviously had technology that's now long lost.
yeah, you know, Tower Bridge in London.
Yes.
Is it Tower Bridge? Yeah, the big bridge with it listed up.
Yeah, that's Tower
When
Bridge,
they built that, yeah, when they built that, the steam cranes that they had at the time could only lift 5 tons, and that's in the 1800s. So how do they, a couple of thousand years ago, whenever?
But this is when you can bump into people in universities and stuff like that. But yes, they used rope and they used logs. But then you say, but it's the middle of the desert and they're building these ginormous pyramids. Where did they get the
Another
wood
one as
from?
well. So you're going to put your big block on logs. Yeah, they just rolled it on logs. How do they make the logs round? How do they make all the logs the same diameter?
Yeah.
Because if your logs are all different diameter, it's only being carried on a couple.
Yeah.
All your roadway has to be perfectly smooth and firm, and then your logs all have to be the same diameter. So how did you lathe a 30-foot trunk that was like 2.5 foot in diameter down to 2 foot diameter? So it's the same as all the rest. Yeah.
I'm thinking of that place. I think it's called. Is it Machu Picchu? I think it's called Machu Picchu or something.
That's the one that's right on top of that mountain. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the places. There's Calo. Well, there's loads in South America.
Oh, yeah.
Some other people. Sorry?
No, I was just saying, South America, that's a whole tour in itself, or just UFO activity.
Lake Titicaca. It's the highest navigable lake in the world. Right. I think it's something like 8,000 feet high or something. I mean, it's massive. It's like 200 miles long. Yeah. It has seahorses in it in fresh water.
Yeah.
Seahorses live in seawater, and if you move an animal from seawater to fresh water, I can't remember which one, the osmosis, the either bloat or the shrink. I can't remember which variant it is.
Yeah.
But it also has toads that only live under the water. They actually breathe through the skin.
I've heard that. I've heard that.
Now, my theory, and it is literally just a theory, so I don't know, some of those sites have had big mudslides on them.
Yes.
If whoever advanced technology was living there at the time, because I think some of these sort of towers in the area, they've got like blast holes in them. It's like Star Wars type thing.
Yeah.
Not Star Wars, but you know what I mean. But the huge blast holes, all these rocks missing, and where these huge waves have come in and hit and washed everything down. Was there a scientific institute there that was doing experiments on seahorses and on toads and some of the other things, and it washed them down into the lake, and some survived and still survive today?
It's it's quite interesting you see that, because obviously you get all these strange creatures. There is a lot of like strange creatures in the world, but nobody know where these creatures have came from. I mean, some of them think that they're maybe aliens or something like that, but maybe the ancients before us were dabbling in genetics. And then
there is proof in that. That's book number 3, by the way. Where I start talking about genetics.
So
2014, 2 guys in was it Afghanistan or Kazakhstan? It was over that way somewhere. They looked at the entire human DNA.
Yeah.
And they went, there's actually coding in here. Because you know that, is it like 3% of our DNA is used and like 97% is just junk DNA apparently. But they found, I can't remember what they said it was, but there's like number systems and things in there. But and this is where I go off in a tangent again. That if you look at chimpanzee DNA, 6 million years ago, there's a common ancestor, common ape, which we are related to, and the closest relative we have is the chimpanzee. Humans developed about 300,000 years ago. Chimpanzees developed 250,000 years ago. All apes and monkeys have 48 chromosomes. We have 46.
Yes.
And when you look at the first 3 chromosomes, you look at the chimpanzee ones, you look at ours, It's like the middle one, the number 2, has been cut in half and
Cut in
attached to
half.
these two. You look at them and you go, well, they all match more or less, but it's been chemically spliced. Someone has spliced our DNA.
Yeah, that's what that. That's like getting into the Anunnaki kind of talk tales and stuff like that. Where they,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's your thoughts on the Anunnaki? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, as far as I'm aware, when the Russian guy that translated him, I can't remember what he's called. The can't think of his name, but the Russian guy translated loads of these tiles. As far as I know, he didn't have an agenda. He was just translating what was written. You know, and on some of them, they found the history of the Great Flood.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Noah's Ark story. The early Christians were captured by the Sumerians, I think, and they were taught in their schools, because I think they were there for like a couple hundred years. And then when they allowed them to go back, they now had the story of Noah. But they learned that in their schools. And I think it's in the British Museum, is that one now. It's like a 3/4 one of the story of Noah. But as far as Zachariah Sitchin, as far as I'm aware, he didn't have an agenda. He was just saying, well, that's what he says. You know, okay, some interpretations might be slightly out, but, you know, if a species came from a strange planet in our solar system, and did alteration to the existing bipedal mammals on Earth at the time, that could be absolutely right.
Yeah.
Now, the way I describe it in book 2 is that aliens, humans, and Bigfoot, it's all related.
Yes.
Because when the Anunnaki came to Earth, and this is just a sort of throw it out sort of theory, they found Bigfoot. And there are several different types of Bigfoot. There's Bigfoot who's too strong, intelligent, has some better skills than us, but would be hard to control. So they want to dumb it down a bit, make it a bit shorter, make it a lot less strong. Well, that's us. That's humans.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So the reason why we have 46 chromosomes, not 48, is so they could breed us with something. So if you get an ape, make it have 46 chromosomes, and then you can breed it with something else that has 46 chromosomes to produce us. You know, most people don't know this, but you know, hung like a donkey is quite a common phrase. And one of the reasons why donkeys, whales, horses, and everything, you know, they actually have a penile bone.
Yes.
You know, we basically have a big sponge, whereas all these animals have a penile bone. Now, which mammals? All of them. All apes and monkeys. I think there's one monkey, but it's so tiny it doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Whales, dolphins, horses, cows, pigs, you know, they all have this bone. It's up, it's down, and we don't have it. And then there's like so many other differences that all these other animals have that we are completely different to them. You know, I mean, we're basically hairless. Why?
I mean,
what? Yeah.
I think the stories are true. I think that we were genetically made, and a lot of people are like, oh no, Darwin's all right, Darwin and all that kind of stuff. And I think we were created for a reason.
Yes.
You know, I think we were created for a reason. That I do not know. For anybody watching right now, I don't know the reason. But I'll hand you over to my co-host Dakota. Dakota, do you have any questions? Because we're actually starting to run out of time.
Oh no, it's up and flown around, hasn't it?
I know.
Oh, it happens every time. But no, the Anunnaki, it's definitely an interesting situation, and where a lot of their depictions show them as looking like the engineers from the Alien movies. Certainly makes you wonder. Was it them that they mixed with Bigfoot here? It would certainly explain why we're all of a sudden hairless. Because what advantage does it? You have all these creatures that have some sort of fat. They have some sort of fur. Even whales have very thin furs to them. What's the advantage of all of a sudden making an animal hairless?
Well, these in my first book, I will just plug it. So this was the original Blowy Sock novel.
Yep.
And I go through a list in there of the differences between apes and us, and there's so many differences. You know, apes and monkeys, they don't have hair on the top lip. I don't think they even have hair. Did you know there's currently 6 different types of human beings on Earth?
That's right. I've heard that.
There's the haplogroups.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get like the South Americans, they have the dark hair. It's a very thick hair. They don't have any facial hair. The Orientals, North American Indians, they come from the Mongolia. There's so many. There's quite a few differences. Yeah.
The link to your books in the chat. I just want to say the link to your books in the chat. People, if you could please click and buy it for Christmas. Buy it for a
Yeah. So you got that one, and then you got this one. The first one. A couple of people have said to me, it does wander a bit all over the place. And I said, well, I did say at the start of the book that this was my journey. I was trying to write a book on.
Yeah.
I think I was trying to write a book on aliens. And then as you're looking into that, you come across something else, and it's like, well, what the heck's that? Oh, I've never heard of it. So I follow that. Whereas in the second book, I've organised it into aliens, ancient advanced humans, and Bigfoot, and then like a conclusion at the end. But the third one, I'm partway through writing. I'm looking at DNA, life on Earth. Life on Earth. Life on Earth was bacteria until 541 million years ago. And then within 5 million years, you got creatures with arms, legs. Well, not arms, legs. You got legs. You got shells. You got brains. You got digestive systems. You got systems that worked in conjunction with bacteria. And it's like,
I think they had a helping hand. I think he had a helping hand. Yeah, I think someone or something did something.
Yeah. The one that's often quoted about, if we told people about aliens and UFOs, that the public will panic. Well, look what happened when they did War of the Worlds on the radio.
Oh yeah.
Well, and again, this one's so I think it was 1936, 1937. It was before the war, but just before the war. Some of the people that were concerned, that did panic, thought it was the Germans were attacking.
Yeah. I've heard
most people, monkeys. It was just all hyped. Yeah.
I think for the human race to find out there's aliens, it is going to happen sooner or later. It's going to happen, but I think it'll happen in the next few years. I think
we'll certainly get closer.
our extraterrestrial friends, I think they want to be an awakening first. They want people to kind of realise that we're here, we don't mean you any harm. Whereas, I mean, you've heard of Project Blue, you've heard of is it Project Blue Beam? Where the fake alien invasion and stuff like that. And I don't think personally. Look, I know for a fact, right? They've been coming here for a long time, right? And people are like, "Oh, what happens if they come in and take us out and kill us?" Or they might look. They've been coming here for that long. They could easily wipe us out, like that.
Oh yeah.
Right. They could easily knock off an asteroid towards us. We couldn't do nothing towards it. They come, they watch us. I've noticed that they like to watch us. It's as if they're watching us grow. But I think they have told the governments of the world, we've been using nuclear weapons and it's a bad idea. It's like what happened at the nuclear missile silos where they turned them off. And
whichever, because they did several sites in the UK, but they also did Russia as well, didn't they?
That's right. They did Russia.
They turned those on, didn't they?
Yeah.
They turned those ones on, but and then they shot there was a test missile as well, wasn't there? That was shot down in flight. Yeah.
It's Well, I mean, it's
Charlie.
I was just going to say there was Rendlesham Forest. That was an interesting case.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what was in that base. Why were they nosing the extraterrestrials? Why were they nosing at that base? Because it's like you say, it was a little ball of light moving through the forest. Was that like a probe, just searching out to see what was there? I
mean, if we are currently with our 6th generation stealth fighters, we're currently looking at having drones fly alongside the jet aircraft. So that, if you want to go and bomb the airbase, the drone goes over and bombs the airbase. If the drone gets shot down, you've lost a $20 million drone or $50 million drone, whatever. But there's nobody inside it.
That's right.
So, if we are now at that step, then, it doesn't take long to get much further on. But I think, just going back to your point before, so I think the the admission by the US Navy a couple of years ago when they said there are things in the sky that we don't know what they are. They have capabilities better than ours. Basically, they're saying UFOs exist, and they're not ours, and they're not Russia's, and they're not China's.
Yeah.
To you and me, that says they come from somewhere else. Okay, the public has to get it slowly. And I've also heard, and it'd be interesting to see, there's somebody who said that, well, now James Webb Telescope is up and running, it's going to find a planet somewhere where they detect signs of life. Only small, and then and it's like you say, they're going to slowly over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, hopefully, slowly give us more and more and more. Find bacterial life on Mars. It's still there. It's fine. So life can form in other places. It's only bacterial. It's okay. And then they'll start building up from there, hopefully.
I'll tell you what, we've got about 5 minutes left to the show.
Yep.
What's your opinion on Mars, the planet Mars?
I cover that in book 2.
Right.
I found places there that look like they've been open cast mined.
Yes.
So if you've got elements in the ground, so you start taking off the topsoil and you dig down, and then you realise that over here no more. So you get these like sort of bits of islands of land with this like low level stuff in between, and all the low level heights are basically the same.
Yeah.
And I give coordinates in the book to go and have a look. But then whenever you look at these bits of land, because most of it looks like cliffs, but on one side you'll always see like a ramp area.
Yes.
Which is interesting. 1972, the Viking landers with the experiment testing there's a name for it, can't think of it, but they proved there's bacterial life on Mars. There is. It's fine. It's there. It always has been. Anything bigger? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know.
It makes you wonder. I mean, listen, we're going to have to get you back again. We're going to have to get you, because he's just absorbing all your kind of knowledge. I mean, all your books will be in the links below and below the video. And we'll have to get you back again for book number 3. But it's been absolutely. Would you like to plug everything anywhere that anybody can reach you?
Simon Amazing Clarke on Facebook. That's always a good one. If anyone's got any questions, just Simon Amazing Clarke. You can email me at Gmail or Facebook, and all the books are in Amazon. So I've got a dozen books. I write all sorts, anything sort of interesting or sci-fi. I even actually have a book on living on Mars, just using imagination and engineering knowledge. And I just do anything that's unusual. That's me.
Well, I'm gonna buy your book. I'm gonna order it tonight for Amazon, because I'm gonna order the first one first. I take it that's on Amazon too, the first one.
Yeah, they're both on there. I think I've got about a dozen books in total that are on there. 3 Black Cats, How to Write and Publish a Book. But so if you are thinking about reading them both, then definitely go for this one first, because it gives you an insight into what I'm learning as I'm going along. And then, like I said, this one's a lot more organised. And note the use of the word too.
want something for a cold winter's night when the wind's howling outside and the snow's coming down.
I think some of what I've written, you need to be under the quilt, where it's safe.
Like that. Trust me, I experienced quite a lot of supernatural stuff. I'm used to it now, So, Dakota, would you like to say anything before anything about tomorrow's show?
Simon, thank you for coming on. It's certainly been an interesting show. Like Chris said, we're going to definitely have to get you back, because this is obviously
more than
topic.
any time, guys. Yep. Thank you. Loved it.
All right.
I just love that sort of stuff. It's great. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you join us tomorrow night, because we're going to be talking about AI, artificial intelligence. It'll be a very interesting show. So I hope you all have a fantastic Saturday night. Catch you all and see you all soon. Catch you later, dudes.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Bye.